Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Countdown to Christmas 2021. Today I am talking about dolls and doll clothes, and I am really excited to share with you some of the knitted and sewn items that I've made over the years to help decorate my home for Christmas and just for my own fun. I've always loved stuffed animals. When I was younger, I had a lot more stuffed animals than actual dolls. But when my daughter was younger, I started purchasing dolls. She did play with them somewhat. She will readily admit that the dolls were more for me than they were for her. And some of the ones that I've purchased were clearly for me because I wanted to have things to knit projects for, and I didn't want to wait till grandbabies, etc. So I want to start with, I'm going to start with some of the knitted items that I have made for the dolls before I move into some of the other dolls. This may be just really random, but let's have fun. So a few years back, again, I said I wanted to use some of my hand spun. And I wanted to make baby sweaters. So I went online and I found some old, nostalgic, needing to be loved by new homes, dolls from, I suspect some of these are from around the time I was little. And I know I have some that I know are older than I am, but I think this one specifically was something that came out probably right after I stopped playing with dolls. So this is just some hand spun, some of my early hand spun. And that's one of the things. Knitting and crochet are so forgiving to our hand spun yarns, especially our beginning learning how to get consistency. There's a lot of inconsistency in this yarn, but once it's all knit up, it works just fine. And it has a little hood, and I just made it up as I went. So that's one of my earlier hand spun and knitted projects. I will set her back down. Along that same line, I was still trying to practice getting different gauge, different size. I have these, as some people might recognize them, they are Biddy twins from a certain company. And these, trying to figure out how to best show them in the camera. There we go. There. Hey, there we go. They're looking at the camera now. But these two little guys, I ended up purchasing them, well, let's just say I got them for Christmas a number of years ago. My children were scheduled to fly the nest, exit. and I knew that by the following Christmas that there was a good chance that they would not be home for Christmas. And I had always been teasing them that I wanted to get the Biddy twins in order to have my own mini version of my children once they flew the coop. So I then had to make them clothes. And he is wearing just a simple raglan sweater with hood. Very basic, very simple. And she, on the other hand, is wearing a raglan sweater dress that has a very simple yarn over pattern lace in the skirt. I was inspired for her dress by one that my mom had made for my daughter. So I will actually dig out that picture and show a picture of my children wearing knitwear that my mom had made for them before she passed away. So I was really inspired to make them some knitted spring colored outfits. So there are my Biddy twins. My children do still groan over the fact that I have dolls now to replace them. Those of you that have been watching my videos for a while, or who go back and look at the ones from last year, will know that I did a bunch of sewn outfits for my American Girl dolls. I have 3 of them that technically 2 of them are my daughters and 1 of them is mine. But last year I found this granny doll and I think she looks a whole lot like me. And what's really funny about her, and I talked about this in videos last time, and I think there'll be a link at the end, links at the end of this video showing that will take you to the videos I made last year showing the American Girl dolls and their harvest outfits and Christmas outfits. But I wanted to share her. One of the things I laugh about whenever I think about her or share her, she sits out all the time on a favorite chair of mine. The thing that cracks me up about her is that as much as I say her, she's my little mini-me, the truth is that I suspect when my daughter grows old, she will look a lot like this little doll. Because unlike me, my daughter does have the big round cheeks with the big dimples on both sides. So we always laugh whenever Granny doll comes out, because honestly, Granny doll wearing a matching granny nightie, to the one that I have, Granny doll is probably a premonition. Not premonition, what is it? A foretelling of what my daughter's going to look like in a few decades. So, I have my granny doll. But, so that's the purchased dolls. What I really wanted to share today, though, was dolls that you can make. Dolls that you can crochet. This is all crocheted out of my hand-spun Luster long wool. Oh, it's got beautiful sheen. It makes great crocheted amagramis. Not necessarily snuggle type dolls. If you're going to use Luster long wool, this is not going to be your grandchild's favorite cuddle toy. But if you want something to decorate a shelf, Luster long wool is a really excellent choice for something that is going to just be decoration. So we have that one. This one is another crochet, and he is just kind of crochet as you go type pattern. Let me see if I can put him there with the white background so you can see him. He's got plastic eyes and a plastic nose, a little crocheted scarf or collar that has earring that we had found just on the ground. Instead of throwing away, cut off the earring back, or I think it had a jump ring, and cut that off and made him a collar. So this cat, because he's got a cat's tail, so we're assuming it's not a teddy bear, but that it's a cat. A fun one. And he is a little more snuggly soft. He is actually, I believe he is a CVM, but it was a CVM that was processed at a mill. I didn't do the processing, so it's a little rougher than some of the stuff I've spun. So it was labeled as CVM, but it's not as soft as some of the CVM I have. And of course, crochet done really tight to do a stuffed animal does feel a little different than when it's knit, and depending on how it's spun. So we got a cat. I wanted to share. I shared these last year at Christmas time. So these guys have a little bit of a story. I'll share that with you again. A number of years ago, well over a decade, I'm sure at this point, I made these little guys, and you see they were a pattern that I think they were called gingerbread dolls, and they've got these little weird feet. And I made them, and I was testing out, seeing if I could do faces in my embroidery machine that would work out. And then I never made the clothes for them. And years, literally a decade went by, and there was no clothes for them. And then when it came time to move, I almost donated them, because I thought, I'm never going to make clothes for them. Because as you can see, they're not exactly built in such a way that you can just put any old doll clothes necessarily on them. Well, as it turns out, I didn't donate them. I brought them with me. And 2 years ago, I think it was, I sat down with some red yarn that I'd spun. Not My favorite spin, it was some that had come free with one of the spinning wheels, and I spun it. This turned out a lot better. I had some problems getting the twist. I was over twisted on this, so it's a little bit rougher. But I made 2 hanks, big skeins of yarn, and I knit these guys up. The white is hand spun Angora, and it's crochet. That's crocheted on. But these guys are just knit, and it is again the top down raglan that went with him. I got down to his legs. I just took off what I thought was legs and seamed up what needed to be in between the legs. So again, just free form, very, very simple. Her dress really reminds me of the movie White Christmas. Just tons of fun. And these guys, while they make great Christmas decorations, they really could be loved by a child. So we'll see when grandkids eventually, arrive, if they stay as Christmas decorations or if they get confiscated by grandkids. So let me put them aside. Show you one of my early sewing projects. Again, about the same time I was making them, and I'm going to have a day where I talk more about gingerbread dolls. But I wanted to give you a sneak peek of this guy because I do really love him. Very simple shapes make wonderful stuffed dolls. And there's tons of patterns that you can buy that are simple sewing. And I'm sure there's lots of tutorials. The one thing I suggest, if you're going to sew yourself a stuffed animal or a stuffed toy, a softie as some people call them, my big tip is when they say to snip at these bends, make sure you snip. I also shorten my stitching length so that there's a lot tinier stitches, because when you're going around all these sharp corners that will need to be turned right side out, you want smaller stitches, not larger stitches, and yes, it will take some good snipping. So they're fun to make. I really do recommend, if you want to have a sewing project and you have never tried making a stuffed animal or a stuffed toy, a doll like this, get yourself a pattern. Buy them used. I know eBay sells a ton of the old patterns, and just give them a try. Some of the ones that I used to have, they made just gigantic dolls. Scale them down. One of the patterns that I first started learning how to sew stuffed toys with, it was really huge. So I went and scaled it down. I took it to a copy machine, scaled it all down, and made half size. And they were adorable and so much fun. So try to find the stuffed toys that are smaller and don't require a whole bag of stuffing in order to finish them up. But I want to end, because I think I've shown you enough stuffed toys to inspire you. I want to end with the 2 dolls that have inspired me for quite a number of years. And I finally got around, I think it was actually last year, I finally got around to tightening up their necks. My grandmother made them, and she followed the pattern, and the necks really wobbled. So I sat down with a needle and some yarn, and I just cinched in their necks a little bit, stuffed them a little bit more with some more fiber fill. But these 2 little guys, they have inspired me for now quite a number of decades. My grandmother passed away in 1994, and she really stopped crafting a good 5 to 7 years before that, because she was diagnosed with Parkinson's while I was at college. And so she really lost the ability to do all of her crochet work. She was a huge crocheter, and I may end up showing up here. I'll take a picture and show 2 snowmen that she made. Her house was filled with crocheted Santas and Mrs. Santas. I could do an entire video just on the different crochet dresses that she made on Cupid dolls, and the snowmen that are on styrofoam. She had her house full of them. But the one snowman and Mrs. Snowman that I'll show you, the thing I love about it is they are made to go over cans of peanuts, cans of nuts, mixed nuts. The size of the can was popular, I believe. Definitely these go back to the 1970s. And so it was a wonderful way to recycle something, repurpose, I should say, something. And so I love those type of projects. I love the inspiration I get from the things that my grandmother made, because she made very basic, very simple, especially compared to the things that are now being created today. The amiguramis and all of the intense crochet work that everyone's doing, the beautiful work, and the, you know, we just live in a world of wonderful abundance when it comes to crafting patterns. And my grandmother took advantage of what was available of her time, and she made things that we do cherish. So when I see these guys, when I see the snowmen, when I see the different things that I have from her, it always takes me back to Christmases of my youth. And that's what I hope I pass on to my children and my grandchildren when they come. I hope that's what I'm passing on to you that choose to watch my videos. When we take the time to make even something as simple as a gingerbread guy. Somebody once joked, she said, was he a little burnt? Well, this is what happens when you hand dye wool and you're not sure what the color is going to turn out with because you haven't used the dye before. You can end up getting something maybe a little more chocolate cookie rather than gingerbread cookie. But whether you pick something that is really elaborate or stick to something that is really simple, when we take the time to make something and pass that on, even if our time only allows us to add one thing each year, when we take that time, when we pass that on, when we share that love of making, when we share that love with others, the simplest gifts now become the greatest gifts that we can give. Because what we are giving is our time and our talent, and most especially, we are giving our love. And as I've said in a previous video, when we share these items, when we make these items with love in our hearts, we've already received all the gift we need in return. It doesn't matter if the recipient gets really excited or is confused. It doesn't matter their reaction, because the gift we receive is the joy of making something with the hope that it'll eventually find a home where it's loved. And while I wait for grandkids, and I wait for my children to take their stuff from my house, I will continue filling my house full of things that I make and things that my grandmother makes. I will add that as a caveat at the end, just to share that joy. My children both really enjoy making these kind of things. When they have the time with their busy schedules, they're usually crafting something. But of my 2 children, it is my son who really goes crazy for these vintage 1970s Snowmen and Santas, the ones that my grandmother made. He just really loves them. Both of them look at the Cupid dolls a little scared. but they both appreciate the work that my grandmother did, that their great-grandmother did. But my son really likes the 1970s vintage decoration. I hope that when he eventually is married, that his spouse will love them too. So that is my Christmas message for today. That is my project. I hope you find joy and some time to unwind with fiber and fabric. We will see you tomorrow.